Okay, welcome everybody to Middlesex University Childhood and Society SIG series for 2025. We're really excited to have Lourdes Kerr, one of Middlesex' own, presenting her secondary research and findings and reflections with us today. Thank you everybody for joining the session, and of course, as always, all the sessions are recorded, and we hope to have some space towards the end for dialogue and reflections, and please do feel free to use the chat in our safe space where all are welcome to share and get tucked into Lourdes's fantastic session today. So practitioners' experiences around the impact of socio-dramatic play on self-regulation in early childhood education is what Lourdes is going to be addressing and engaging with us today. So over to you, Lourdes, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Angela. Good morning, everyone. So today's dialogue is going to be on a systematic review that I have done that emphasizes on the essential role of early years practitioners in fostering self-regulation through effective co-regulatory strategies and co-regulatory coaching. So by providing supportive environment and understanding the dynamics of social dramatic play, practitioners can help children navigate social norms and develop vital emotions and cognitive skills. So my awareness of an ontological position is having more than 2 decades of experience in the early years sectors, both as a practitioner and as a manager. I have observed many practitioners' hesitation to integrate sociodramatic play or be part of the sociodramatic play and incorporate this into their practice, despite of its clear potential to support children's cognitive development. So these are some of the aims. So how can sociodramatic play be more effective integrated within the early years practice to promote self-regulatory skills? We're also going to have a look at the challenges that some of the early years practitioners face when they are in practice, and how these actually impacts their participation during this sociodramatic play. Also, a little bit of a summary of techniques and approaches from previous research and published reports on how to apply these techniques during the play, and some of the recommendations of how early years practitioners can identify and evaluate the most suitable strategies to support self-regulatory skills within their practice. And it's something that we will discuss towards the end, because I would love to hear your opinions about it. So children learn and develop at a faster rate from birth to 5 years old than any other time in their lives. So their experiences in early years have a major impact on their future lives chances. Children's emotional and social development is recognized within the early years foundation state as a prime area of development due to its importance in social emotional well-being. Both the Department of Health and Social Care and the Department of Education have both, within the last decade, prioritized health and education in the United Kingdom. So the early years sector has consequently been encouraged to facilitate environments where practitioners can support the successful development of self-regulation skills. Yet they often meet challenges due to the increasing demand placed on them by senior management to prioritize formal learning over more playful formats. This makes it difficult for these professionals to adjust their practices and advocate for spontaneous quality play-based activities that promote personal, social, and emotional development and the support children need for successful development for self-regulatory skills. Studies have proven time and time that children who are able to express their emotions effectively achieve better academic outcomes, improve their health, and enhance their social competency. Empirical literature affirms that early years practitioners are role models for children in identifying and managing emotions, particularly in terms of adopting emotional language to support children by co-regulating. Therefore, practitioners provide a key tool that enables children to recognize their feelings and develop self-regulatory skills. So Play is intrinsically linked to the development of self-regulation, as through play, children engage in activities that require them to follow rules, take turns, and manage their impulses. It provides all the necessary ingredients for children to be creative through complex ideas, positive relationships, social competency, and peer acceptance. Self-regulation encompasses competencies such as maintaining focus, attention, and the ability to engage in social interactions during play, which starts to develop as early as infancy and are vital for children's autonomy, self-regulation, and long-term independence. This ability to self-regulate involves managing individuals' emotions, behaviors, and thoughts in a way that is conducive to achieving personal goals and adapting to changing environments, thus presenting children with resources to practice these self-regulation skills in a low-stress, enjoyable environment enables opportunities for their growth and emotional development. Therefore, sociodramatic play empowers children to take agency of their own imagination. From the age of 3, children start using sociodramatic play to engage in cooperative role play, often representing real-world activities and social interactions. So the Vygotskian theory highlights the benefits of sociodramatic play, claiming that it allows children to plan and organize their thinking while acquiring new self-regulatory skills. Furthermore, the Vygotskian approach to play illustrates the intrinsic relationship between pretend play and child development and the acquisition of self-regulatory skills. It also highlights the importance of encouraging collaboratively play to enable scaffolding and reciprocal teaching through the more knowledgeable other and its influence. So early years practitioners can support children in achieving high level of persistence, a necessary feature of mature play within the child's zone of proximal development. This involves specific mechanisms and levels of competence that leads to self-regulation, resulting in optimal cognitive, social, and emotional development, as well as supporting the development of executive function. As such, it is beneficial for practitioners to integrate play into childhood education, as it will create opportunities for children to develop these essential skills in a natural and effective manner. For example, sociodramatic play, in particular, teach patience. When children learn to wait for their turn, make rules, and negotiate roles. However, societal rules and pressure from the formal education sector can limit their opportunities to engage in such play. Therefore, early years practitioners' involvement in sociodramatic play is fundamental. Howard and Milhush supports this notion by indicating that preschool children are particularly receptive to their environment and are significantly influenced by the quality of expressive vocabulary presented, which aids in early cognitive control and self-regulation. However, this could prove to be challenging for practitioners due to exhaustion, which can hinder their ability to express emotions. Generally, and lead to perceived lack of professionalism. And this is something that I notice on a regular basis when I was in practice. I noticed that exhaustion and really hinder the engagement in the play between adults and children. So fostering self-regulation in early childhood can be a vital component of ensuring that children are prepared for school and enabled to achieve their full potential through life. Vygotsky's sociocultural theory emphasizes the prominence of pretend play as a means through which children create symbolic representation of recurring social interactions and situations. Initially, this form of play involves simply mimicry and role-taking, but as children engage more deeply, it evolves into socio-dramatic play. This transition marks a significant development in their cognitive and social skills as children begin to craft more intricate scenarios incorporating both performative and verbal interactions. Dunn asserts that children, when afforded the right opportunities and conditions, can cultivate effective and harmonious methods of interacting with one another. Early year settings can facilitate these interactions by providing young children the opportunities to express a range of emotions independently from their peers. by supporting their psychosocial development and the achievement of critical development milestones. So in terms of co-regulation, the quality of the early years interactions significantly influences self-regulatory development. However, practitioners often encounter challenges due to disparities in understanding what self-regulation entails. It is often observed that they emphasize characteristics such as following instructions and showing sensitivity to peers during play. And I would like to add some experience from practice that I've noticed that some of the practitioners consider self-regulatory skills to be very linked to saying sorry to the children, apologizing, knowing how to share, and also sitting on a mat for long periods of times, which are not necessarily intrinsically linked with play, and how to apply and learn how to exercise the ability to express their emotions through play. So therefore, the importance of integrating the play and the adults integrating themselves in the play so they can model how to do this. Skill Boomer, investigating early years practitioners' emotions, coachings, and self-regulation using recording observations to analyze the interactions between teachers and children during emotionally challenged episodes. The sample consisted of 28 children aged between 3 and 6. The caregiver serves as a co-constructor of effective emotion regulatory agents. An emotion regulatory subscales of the KIPP scales of social emotion development was applied to measure children's emotional regulations. In addition, the EMO-REG, a self-devised coding scheme based on an event coding approach, was used to record observations and analyze interactions, while the study states that these tools generated descriptive statistical results, and it is apparent that these findings were predominantly textual, therefore considered very descriptive. So for instance, the study reported that following results, emotional episodes, practitioners, emotions coaching, co-regulatory, and self-regulation. This indicates several significant correlations determining factors that influence how practitioners coach their own emotions and subsequently co-regulate to children's developmental levels. So for example, practitioners' emotion coaching occurrences vary widely across each other. This was seemingly dependent on child development and how practitioners co-regulate and adjust their own behavior according to each situation. It is essential for practitioners to acquire a solid understanding of co-regulatory strategies, enabling them to manage their own emotions effectively before assisting children in regulating theirs. A supportive emotional climate facilitates practitioners to enhance children's ability for self-regulation, demonstrating the importance of holistic approaches in early childhood education that prioritize both practitioners' knowledge and emotional competence. Consequently, educators with the necessary tools and insight can lead to improve outcomes in children's emotional and social development. So the early years practitioners' perceptions on sociodramatic play, it stresses the significance and the importance of a more knowledgeable other facilitating the children's social play skills, allowing them to blend dramatic elements and engage in collaborative experiences. Such supportive guidance creates opportunities for children to gradually develop their sociodramatic play, acquiring the necessary skills and confidence to independently create characters and incorporate props. However, in contrast, Steiner believes that early years practice presents an opposing perspective. He presents an opposing perspective, suggesting that adults' intervention in children's imaginative play may disrupt their natural capacity for dream consciousness. Steiner argued that free thinking should remain uninstructed and free from questioning, and such interference as such interference could be counterproductive to long-term intellectual development. So how can early years practice incorporate drama? The Menschko examined the impact of training future primary and early years practitioners to incorporate drama into their teaching. These encompass European pedagogical concepts for embedded theatrical activities to develop soft skills, essential for personal growth and successful social adaptation. In addition, the study measured teachers' motivation in using theatrical activities, for example, puppet theater, knowledge of the process of organizing pedagogical theatrical activities, and their ability to self-assess the development of children's soft skills. Qualitative data were gathered through diverse methods. These included students' feedback and assessment to evaluate early years practitioners' learning and experiences, understanding of theatrical pedagogy, and readiness to implement these activities in their teaching practices. So practitioners integrated 4 modules of theatrical pedagogy and practices from the European context. It is noteworthy that the data was collected during the pandemic, hence it was predominantly focused on practitioners' preparations on applying theatrical strategies to assist children in acquiring soft skills. Therefore, it could be argued that a more effective approach evaluating young children's interactions in the early year setting can be considered, using a multi-methodological approach to provide a thorough picture of children's self-regulatory skills. The philosophical view of sociodramatic play involves Waits and Rees' critical exploration on the Steiner philosophy, with a particular focus on its approach to imaginative play and its role in nurturing empathy among young children. The study identified additional pedagogical frameworks that promote imaginative play within mainstream early year settings, establishing a foundation for healthy interpersonal relationships. The researchers found that Steiner educations exemplify key qualities such as authenticity and respectfulness, which are traits that are essential for scaffolding sensitivity and empathy in young learners. Additionally, these educators created environments that encourage children to freely engage in the development of their ethical identities. So while this is considered, while this is recognized as educational philosophy, it is not widely practiced in UK settings, which could indicate a shift in relationships between practitioners and children. Early years practice in the UK today incorporates children spending a significant amount of time in planned activities and structured play. Carlson and Clark suggest that early childhood practitioners value stretched time in children's daily routines, and the authors highlight the importance of making children active participants in revealing their own learning through shared interactions. The approach involves modeling an unhurried pace, encouraging practitioners to pause and give their full attention to the child, allowing time to recognize the child's signals, hear their voices, and create a space for children to explore their emotions more deeply. Oscar and Ivrendis study and examine how early years practitioners and mothers view the relationship between sociodramatic play and self-regulation, concluding there was no causal relationship. This longitudinal study involved recruiting 51 children to assess their self-regulatory skills using observational skills and scales to measure elements of sociodramatic play. For example, symbolic agents, symbolic substitution, symbolic complexity. So the authors note that future interventions may be better implemented by trained teachers in more naturalistic environments. So Johansson and Pramling challenge such approach by suggesting that although play is learning in more effective when integrated in early years, this may not be feasible in all contexts and settings. Instead, they recommended developing educational and pedagogical activities in a monographic way, namely narrative interplay and playful learning, combining pretend and real. Silamsky and Shefata similarly assert that play pedagogy enhances children's sociodramatic play by incorporating modeling, verbal guidance, fantasy story enactment, and puppets for practicing facial expressions. The impact of such methods is further evident in Baldin's and in McCabe's research, which applies Vygotsky theory to scaffolding children's dramatic play experiences, enriching the dynamic learning atmosphere where children can freely explore roles and narratives whilst developing their social and emotional skills. So the daily integration of sociodramatic play, practitioners should consistently integrate sociodramatic play into daily routines to promote emotional and social development. A whole school approach with routines and environments that support self-regulation through continuous play-based activities should be integrated with minimal adult intervention. So, for example, Steiner kindergartens provide children the freedom to explore emotions and empathy through daily imaginative play. Another result and part of the discussion is that drama-based activities embedded in disadvantaged school settings increase emotional engagement and literacy. Teachers that encourage sociodramatic play as a core part of their day supports impulsive children to control their behaviors within structured settings. Complex symbolic play could improve individuals' inhibitory control and attention. Complex play facilitates impulsive children in managing their behaviors more effectively, and guided play, where teachers offer emotional prompts, help children develop self-regulation and emotional challenging scenarios. Teacher-led regulation. Teachers' play co-regulates children's interactions during sociodramatic play. Modeling emotional regulations can help children gradually internalize their own behaviors. McCabe and Lousou also state that how teachers use these strategies, namely teacher in a role, to subtly guide children's play, through which they develop social skills and self-regulation without direct intervention. The pertinence of teacher-led co-regulation, especially for impulsive children, demonstrates how teachers' guidance during play improves this emotional control. Skillbommer et al. Supports this notion by demonstrating how teachers who adjust their involvement based on the child's development needs assist children in managing their emotions more effectively during sociodramatic play. Such stable environments could ultimately improve the quality training and support to early years practitioners and have profound implications on children's health and psychological development to achieve endure positive outcomes. So I would like, how am I with time, Angela?
Yeah, you're doing great. You've got 5 to 10 minutes ish before we go into dialogue, so it's up to you.
Okay. So as part of the discussion, I wanted to add that the research aimed to explore how sociodramatic play influences self-regulation among 3 to 5-year-olds. So the findings reveal from secondary data that 3 interrelated themes highlighted the importance of integrating sociodramatic play into daily routines. Firstly, sociodramatic play facilitates emotional exploration, allow children to express, regulate their emotions more effectively, and this aligns with the work of Oskan and Ivrendi, who asserts that creating opportunities for children to engage in sociodramatic play significantly contributes to their development of self-regulatory skills. So when children participate in role play scenarios, they practice empathy and perspective taking, essential components of emotional intelligence. Such experiences allow young learners to navigate complex social interactions, fostering and understanding of different emotional states, not just their own, but of their peers. Secondly, the presence of a more knowledgeable other, specifically early years practitioners, proves crucial in shaping the development of self-regulation during sociodramatic play. Practitioners who skillfully scaffold children's play are able to enhance their learning experiences by guiding them to elaborate more complex scenarios, which is closely related to Vygotsky's concept of zone of proximal development. Minimal adult intervention allowed children the freedom to explore emotions and empathy through play, making it essential for practitioners to know when to step in and when to withdraw. Debchenko et al. Stresses the significance of using pedagogical theatrical activities to stimulate creativity and self-awareness in children, suggesting that such strategies not only improve play interactions, but also support self-regulatory by fostering independence within a structured environment. So by providing children with the tools to navigate social roles, practitioners create conditions that encourage mutual discovery and collaboration. And finally, modeling emotional regulation by practitioners is vital for effective self-regulation during sociodramatic play. Grimmer and Gaines highlight that practitioners who demonstrate their own emotional regulation skills provide children with the opportunities to learn through observation and imitation. Furthermore, practitioners can adjust their involvement in guided play according to each child's developmental needs, enhancing their ability to manage emotions effectively. So this reciprocal relationship fosters an environment conducive to learning self-regulation skills in real time, as children are encouraged to practice these skills during emotionally charged moments within their play. And as we know, these moments are quite predominant in early year settings. The ever-increasing pressure placed on practitioners to prioritize formal learning, emphasizing the growing need to embed sociodramatic play into early years education. Recent discussions on educational policy highlight a gap in understanding the role of play in fostering essential developmental skills. So by shifting focus towards structured play-based activities, practitioners can advocate for a balanced approach to learning that acknowledges the significance of emotional and social well-being. Mounting evidence suggests that when sociodramatic play is prioritized, positive outcomes, including improved self-regulation and enhanced behavioral management, emerge more prominently. The research reveals that while many practitioners recognize the value of sociodramatic play, there is still a pervasive lack of awareness concerning its specific positive impacts on self-regulation. This lack of awareness can be traced back to limited discussions on sociodramatic play within early years policies and educational frameworks, underscoring the need for further training and professional development. So some of the recommendations are involving some of the latest research on evidence that show that educators can implement approaches that benefit young children's self-regulation, and also as well as executive function. So one of those examples is the Early Education Endowment Foundation, that has created an early years toolkit that finds that self-regulation approaches may also be effective in promoting successful learning. So while there is evidence that implementing these approaches could have positive impact on children's self-regulation and executive functions outcomes, there are still some questions that are unanswered, and so more research is needed. So in the evidence, educators use different approaches to support self-regulation and executive functions. Some require proactive and explicit teaching and modeling. Others may arise from educators' observations of children activities in the moment, and other requires educators to intentionally structure experiences for children to facilitate development during play, enabling them to practice and try out different strategies. It is important to plan adult-led opportunities to teach self-regulation strategies to supplement the opportunities that arise during guided and child-led play. Responsive and responsive co-regulation. This enables children to develop a repertoire of strategies to draw on. So this is a booklet that supports children's self-regulation. It's part of Early Years Library developed by the Early Intervention Foundation, PEDAL. And it has a lot of strategies that provide, with some videos as well, that provide some opportunities for the practitioners to model how to use these techniques in the classroom. Another great source is the Harvard University Center for Developing the Child. Has a useful guide to executive function, including the research behind the development of executive function and activities across the different ranges to support children's executive function development. The activities that follow have been identified as age appropriate, and they have ways to strengthen various components for executive function. Although scientific studies have not yet proven the effectiveness of these suggestions, their presence here reflects the judgment of experts in the field about activities that allow children to practice their executive function skills. Practice leads to improvement. So these activities are not only the ones that may help, but rather they represent a sample of the many things children can enjoy that can support healthy development. So finally, you can have a look at the websites, and the idea is to include these in practice, to use it as a tool and as a resource to be able to apply it when needed. So for example, one of the examples is imaginary play. It's a great technique that this amazing guide has, and it supports the practitioners to allow toddlers to develop the capacity for simple imaginary play. So, for example, often toddlers imitate adults' actions using objects that they have available, such as sweeping with a broom or pretending cook with a pot. And when they reach this a certain age, these actions are not simply imitative, but can also be sustained and show signs of simple imaginary play plots. So it can be cooking, it can be playing in the kitchen, it can be outside in the garden, sharing a game, or inside putting the table and pretend to eat. So children will ask questions about what is it that they're doing, and the practitioner can support this by narrating the things that is happening. So the question now, and it's mainly why I decided to come in and do this talk and have a dialogue with experts, it's what is next. So my question is, how can we embed this in our courses? How can we promote these techniques and practices? Workshops are really helpful, but sometimes it's difficult to incorporate them in our everyday routines as lecturers. It would be great to model this to our students, so then they can take that to their placements and they can practice some of these techniques and come back with how do they think, how helpful they find these techniques. I don't know, Angela, if you want to come in.
Hey, firstly, Lourdes, before I come in, I'd like to say thank you on behalf of all of us here for your time and your expertise. So you said you want some dialogue from experts, but we've just been listening to an expert in the field, so thank you so much. I think what you've provoked through your secondary research is absolutely a really strong foundation for future exploration into that. And you know, as chair, I'm not going to. I think Alina and Jane want to come in first, but you know, when you provoke us to think about the impact of sociodramatic play and self-regulation, these huge aspects of what happens every day in all the moments of practice and provision, it's really interesting to look at those 3 points that you brought up. And I was really interested in how we facilitate emotions and who's facilitating who. So we always think about facilitating children, but actually who's facilitating the adults, and where's that? And again, the point you brought up about the need for training and consciousness, I think they're really powerful. And again, when you said about you know, the more knowledgeable other, we mustn't always assume the more knowledgeable other is the adult. You know, let's think about children being more knowledgeable others as well, in the zone of approximate development that you brought in. Where do children go for that? And there's so much untapped resourcing going on within play that we don't, us adults don't see. And again, you talked about the adults creating spaces for self-regulation, hopefully for themselves, for each other, and then for the children. So really provocative, which I could talk to you much more on. So I'm really excited to engage with the rest of your research that you're going to be looking into. But I know, Alina, did you want to come in? And then I think Jane also had reflections and comments. Thanks, Lourdes.
Thank you.
I was just reflecting while Lourdes was talking, and you know, very often formal learning is prioritized over play, and play is more and more reduced even in primary schools. I was listening the other day, there was a report, a concern that children have less and less time to play, and if you know, play is so essential, is a essential way of learning for children, and not just for children but for adults too. I think we also need, you know, a different kind of play, but we also need play because this is helping us to learn as well. So I was just wondering, how do we find the right balance between formal learning and also having these play activities in early years? You were talking about, you know, we have evidence, we have research, we need more research, more awareness, more training, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's exactly the question that I have, and the reason why I brought it here to CERS, because I want to hear your opinions. How can we embed this? Do we start doing it ourselves as in our seminars? Do we use it as an example, but using all of the evidence and the research that is out there? But how can, as the same research and it says, it's still not 100% out there. We're still not practicing this on an everyday basis. So settings are still steering away from it. We know as a fact that our students are petrified of being theatrical, of playing with the children, of sitting down and having that engaging, you know, that meaningful engagement with the children. How can we get them there? That's the massive gap I have in my mind, and I would love to hear from you guys. Yeah.
Oh, Nick's got his hand up, and I'm just going to quickly butt in before Nick comes in, and then on to Jane. With that point that you just said, Alina and Lourdes, I think playing, adults playing, and not being ashamed to play. It's not something, you know, the words that come up with play, or you're being childish, this is juvenile, that's immature, mature. You know, these words that are associated to play. If we look through a rights-based lens, particularly as I do, the way that, you know, anything to do with children and play is kind of always seen as something to put down, is quite an interesting area to advocate against and to challenge. And also there's been quite a lot of experts, just like yourself, who are in the Play Matters document. It's going live tomorrow, which is about celebrating play. And this is kind of being rolled out for practice, for research, for educators, for policymakers, to celebrate play and to do the point that you just said, Lourdes and Alina, to make play more part of what we do, because children up to the age of 8, according to, you know, general comment number 7, have got the right to play in year 1, 2 and 3, and yet play is used as a bargaining chip. It's not seen as a right. And that's really interesting, again, where these points that you're raising about how can we be more playful, how can we engage with play. And I think the last bit was about not being scared to challenge. Like, I know I saw somebody on LinkedIn lately that said that, or in a meeting that I was in, that said that play should be changed, the language of play should be changed to the word learning. And it's like, hang on a minute, learning happens within play, but play is so much more than learning. It is learning, But that agenda of that small measurement, that learning through this educational lens, and play must fit into that, is absolutely got to be challenged through the core, I feel. I'll stop now. Nick, coming over to you back. Sorry, I hogged as a chair there.
Yeah, I was just, to answer your question, Lourdes, I was thinking about kind of stepping stones to dramatic play, that the idea of maybe acting in inverted commas at one extreme might feel terrifying, but it starts really with kind of thinking from another perspective, for example, or reflecting on a situation from different perspectives. And I was just sort of thinking, if we started to build in that sense of thinking beyond your own perspective, is that one way of starting the journey? Because I find that's one thing that students find quite difficult, is thinking beyond themselves and their own little world. And then we start to build out from that. And I was also, I mean, I'm more of a secondary drama person, where I guess things start to shift, but you started to use the word drama. And I guess I'm quite interested in when you move from sociodramatic play to drama and what you see as that distinction. But maybe you can answer that in a second. But I was just sort of thinking, there's books, there's a particular book in secondary drama that I find really interesting about looking at reflective context building, creative, poetic or something. But I was just sort of thinking, there are these different ways of thinking about situations. If we were thinking about like being in a classroom, we could get students to think of different things that are maybe what ifs, again, rather than just having to act. You know, context building, for example.
I love your question, because there is, I think early years has the potential for everything to involve dramatic play, more than sociodramatic play happens. You know, children are drawn to want to play with other children from the age of 3, between 3 and 4 and 5, when they're developing their language and when they are doing cooperative play. So they do that sociodramatic play. They want to recreate what they see in their microsystems and their mesosystems. They want to bring it into their play so they can practice and do the schematic learning. But I also think that because as adults we don't really do that naturally, we have to employ our dramatics. We have to be more dramatic. Am I making a point here? So that's where I think we need to make that distinction, and we have to realize. So we do a lot of shared sustained thinking, for example. So we need to go, I wonder. So instead of having that constant, I'm going to teach you, I'm going to tell you when this glass is full and when this glass is empty, it's just having that dramatic essence within your practice, I think will have a positive influence on how the children, how the adults interact and are given the permission to get into that sociodramatic play that children are naturally doing.
Sorry, I was typing, Lourdes. Just I was capturing some of the points that Alina, myself, Nick, and that came up in your responses, so that they're on the chat. So I know that Jane, am I okay to come over to you next?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Lourdes. It really is it just resonates massively with me this morning. I was driving in and Woman's Hour was on, and I was absolutely raging by the time I got out of the car. So they had an item on there where they were talking to a series of researchers in another London university and Cambridge as well, I think. And the whole premise of the discussion was around the COVID generation. So 4-year-olds, children in reception class, those who were born in the depths of the pandemic. And the whole discussion was about how broken they are, how learning loss, they can't manage to go to the toilet by themselves, they can't concentrate, they can't self-regulate, they can't. And so the whole premise of the discussion was, well, what can we do to fix them? They're clearly very, very broken. What can we do to fix them? And part of that discussion was self-regulation, skills of self-regulation. And I was really raging, as I say, because I think that there's a real fundamental issue in how we conceptualize the child. And Angela kind of touched on it as to, you know, who's the knower, who's the valid knower, who's the player, who can we learn with and from. And it's not the adult that knows everything, and it's not that we necessarily need to fix children who, in my view, are not broken. I think it raises some serious questions about the very concept and discourse of school readiness. Should 3- and 4-year-olds even be in school is, for me, a big question. Should they be endlessly regulated? Should they be on dots and squares and lining up and doing this and doing that? And all this pressure for funny phonics and literacy and numeracy and, you know, the whole atmosphere of formal learning in reception classes is really fundamentally not aligned to what children need and how children thrive. And I kind of sensed this from the research I was doing through the Mini Beast project, where we took in arts-based methods, including sort of dramatic play and improvisation and just this idea that you couldn't get it wrong. It was about exploration, experimentation, fun, movement, getting outside, you know, all of that stuff, and moving away from this heavily regulated way of being a child. And if you can demonstrate that you can contain yourself, then and you say the right things and you behave the right way, then you're not broken, so we'll leave you alone. And I think the other problem is that it kind of hides social justice issues, you know, around who's broken, who's the most broken. And there was all this stuff on this the Women's Hour about, you know, it's children from the poorest backgrounds who are the least literate and the least numerate and suffering the most. And that's, you know, by proxy, because the parenting is deficit. So it was just this endless layering of deficit upon deficit upon deficit of these particular families and these particular children. So I've written to Women's Hour and said, no, you're wrong. Well, you need to think about children differently. You need to conceptualize the child in terms of what they can do, in terms of their capabilities, their aptitudes, and the fact that maybe it's not children who are broken, but it's schools that are not fit for purpose for those children.
Yeah.
And this is what's, you know, this is what's being discussed here around who can play, who can be a player, what can we learn with and from children. And I think that is the fundamental thing. So absolutely loved everything you had to say, but if we're thinking about self-regulation, I would just urge that it's about self-regulation not because it's fitting that agenda of fixing the broken child, but I think it is being used in that way, in this kind of dominant discourse that's going on at the moment, and this policy landscape about, okay, we've got to fix the COVID generation, and self-regulation is one means of doing that, and that worries me massively. But your research, you know, go for it, it's brilliant. And I'd love to hear more. Sorry, that was a big polemic rant, but I felt quite angry.
That's brilliant.
But I'd like to know a bit more about social dramatic play. Like, what is that? What does it look like? How does it come about? What's the role of the adult? Are you following the child? Is it the child leading the social dramatic play? And because I think we have a tendency to kind of intervene all the time, when actually this stuff can come up in a more improvisational way, with us doing not very much, actually. So yeah,
you just touched a very, very sensitive chord with me there, Jen, and I really appreciate, because I wasn't thinking about talking about it today, but I love that you did. You reminded me. I'm part of the Froebelian philosophy course, and one of the discussions that we were having this last Wednesday was when we are supposed to intervene in children's play, that fine line, which is for me imperceptible, invisible, and it takes so much experience, practice, and knowing when to intervene, which is a very pivotal and very sensitive moment. It's a very difficult thing to know when to do it. It can be so detrimental, it can be so helpful. But I think that when we play, we kind of erase that fear of, or that, to know when to have that permission. Oh, can I go in? Can I not go in? If you're playing, you're playing. There are no rules. So I think the emphasis here, which is where I'm steering to, is how to play with children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just madly writing something in the chat, but I could just say it. There's a book that Victoria and I have just edited called Post-Developmental Approaches to Play. And in that book, we're looking at how that's possible for practitioners and researchers to actually approach how we engage with children differently, that foregrounds play and play without an objective or an agenda, just play for play's sake, not play for a proxy for
Love
learning.
that.
But
They need-
also a couple of chapters in that book are written by early childhood academics and early childhood researchers about their own capacities or difficulties with playing and what play feels like and how, and all the things that you've been saying, you know, about who has the right to play and how do you play. And it's something I've taken up in another paper that I wrote with Sid Mohandas about, we call it, well, we borrow the concept and practice of childing from Kennedy and Cohen, but really childing is playing, you know, that kind of being curious, exploring, experimenting, not knowing, kind of setting aside this need to be an expert or demonstrate mastery and so I think, you know, there is a really exciting, and I know that Angela's just mentioned that there's an early childhood education group that are sort of activist in this space, and I think that it's happening in lots of different spaces, so that it does feel like there's like a groundswell movement from slightly different theoretical and pedagogical orientations, but nevertheless that this kind of reclaiming play and reclaiming childhood as valid and valuable, and that actually we need to push back, we need to resist this kind of very narrow conceptualization of the child that does rest upon a series of deficits.
Yes, and also knowing that as much as if we don't have this in mind, if we don't have that hat, but that child, you know, everything that you just said, let's say that you can, you know, you can symbolize that as a hat, we will always dominate children's play.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That can have very negative impacts, and we will lose the opportunities to learn more from children and to support them more effectively.
And frankly, by and large, adults are not as good at play as children.
Oh, no, we are not at all. We need to learn from them.
We are deficient, aren't we, in terms of play?
Well, you know what? We think we know it all and we're competent and capable as adults, and we're very quick to and again, I know Federico's here, but Freeney and myself as Scotland, we've been writing about environments that enable rather than enabling environments, and we've been writing about the positionality, not to look at children as pupils or these in these educational systems, but to look at children in their own right as a human. And when we do that, it can provoke adults who are willing to be, and you were alluding to this all the way through, Lourdes, about being conscious of what our role is, but you know, how we position children and where we're kind of feeling that they are, and how we, as Alison Clark provokes us to think about how we're listening to them and what we're kind of extracting and pulling out and what we're focusing on. And when we do that, well, why are we doing that? But what are we missing at the same time? And I think the cartoon Rugrats, I wrote about it years ago, but in Rugrats, you know, the children are in that cartoon in a little playpen, and, you know, Uncle Stu and Grandpa are walking past and they're seeing the children in the playpen who look really calm, you know, maybe passing a ball to each other. But those children in the playpen, you know, Angelica's just about whether to going to decide if she's going to kill Chucky or not off the mountain, and there's a Yeti coming for them. And if us adults aren't immersed in that, as you said earlier, Lourdes, playing, you know, and in there, we don't know that. We're assuming all the time. So our positionality is huge, and where we're coming from, what we see. So
I think if we
so
do all of
positive.
that we're saying today, and if we could just have that in mind, it will open a window of how children actually view things, and not coming from the position of, you know, I think we do sometimes, and I am guilty of that myself as a lecturer in my seminars, of making sure that the students know about safeguarding. making sure that children are, you know, in the risk assessment, everything, and it's that seriousness of it and how to separate the two. We can do that, but I think it comes with practice, and you know, practice makes excellence. So
Yeah. So I think we've got Nick's last person with hand up. I'm hoping that's all I'm seeing. Yeah, Nick there. And I know there's a few more points in the chat, but Nick, your hand's up.
Oh, sorry. I feel like I'm going to throw a bit of a annoying thing in. But I was just thinking, just to be devil's advocate a little bit, how do we deal with the fact that play might not be benign? Is there a danger that we assume that it will be? How do we deal with sexist, racist, bullying play? What does play have to kind of within itself to kind of engage with some of these things? I mean, I've got some thoughts, but I just think it's an interesting thing that we need to have in the back of our minds, that it won't always it won't always be nice or even progressive or helpful necessarily.
I think everything is up to discussion. Yes, Jane,
No, you carry on, Lourdes. I'll jump in after.
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I think that you're absolutely right, Nick. And this has been written about extensively and researched extensively. Back in 2017, a bunch of us from CERS guest edited a special issue of Contemporary Issues in Early Childhood on dark play. And I know Victoria has just written a book about play and taboo play and problematic play, and also play not being the only the preserve of children, but what happens when you can't see what play is unfolding. And so, you know, that invisible play and subversive play. And so yeah, I think it opens a whole other space of debate, doesn't it? About whether you intervene, how you intervene, what's happening, what's unfolding when that dark and taboo play is happening. Yeah.
I think it opens things up, doesn't it? That's why that's where I would still hold a candle for it, because it, in a way, does it liberate things that are latent anyway and mean that they can actually be talked about within a safe space and context in a way that without play you maybe couldn't. Something like that.
Nick and Jane, on them points that you just raised, our students are picking up on this when they're reflecting. They're seeing areas of play that they're coming back into reflecting on, asking to talk about it, asking what to do, you know, reflecting on their actions on that, about how to engage with areas about that arise through play that they hadn't expected. So this is quite powerful, and we're kind of dealing with that through our teaching. So it kind of does a circle back to the point Lourdes said at the beginning. How do we bring this into the teaching that we're doing as much as the research? And it's about listening to the students, what's coming up, what are they seeing, because they're our 21st century researchers with, you know, what's happening in practice now. So that's a really live issue that we're dealing with in the programme at the moment. Really powerful point to kind of finish up on. I know we've gone 3 minutes over, but there was one other person, and I don't want to miss them out. And I don't know if is the point from Ola Yinka. I don't know, Ola Yinka, did you want to come in, or was that just a comment on there? No pressure. No? Okay.
It was just a comment, Angela. Thank you very much. Just my wondering aloud.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And then Lottie, very fine. I was just really mindful to make sure everybody's included today. Lottie, was yours a comment, or did you wanted to speak to Lourdes and grab it all to yourself at a later date?
No, sorry, I'm just on a bus. No, I literally just wanted to say this has been really fascinating, and thanks so much. And I look forward to more conversations as well in real life, so we don't go more over time. So thank you to everyone.
Okay, thanks, Lottie. Thanks, Lianki. Well, okay, so I think we'll come to a close. We've run a few minutes over, Lourdes, but that's because we want more. You've raised a lot of really tantalising and provocative issues for us to get our teeth into, particularly those of us here who are all interested in play and the self-regulation, the socio-dramatic side of it. So we'd like to really thank you for sharing your expertise and your research. And really look forward to inviting you back next year to hear more about what's going on. And I'm sure it's okay for us to contact you through email. Lourdes
Absolutely, thank you. And send me everything you think is going to be helpful to continue this journey, because it's just, I suppose it's just the beginning, and having you, helping, it's going to make it more enjoyable and more insightful.
Okay, so thanks, Lourdes. Thank you again for today. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. Really appreciate your time and your dedication to the dialogue. It's always interesting to hear what comes out. And we will be putting your recording up, Lourdes, so that we can revisit and engage more. And we're really excited that the Child and Society SIG videos that are going up, they're on YouTube for anybody to go back onto the CERS site to go back to, but we're also using them now as our teaching resources. So we're using them as activities for our students who are unable to come today because they might be in placement. So thank you, everybody, for the dialogue that really kind of provokes our students and our researchers and us as lecturers to engage more with the points. So thanks, everybody, for today.
Thanks,
Thank
Lourdes.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks so
everyone.
much.
Thank you,
Angela.
Angela.
Thanks, Lourdes. I'll just turn this off.
Please stay with me at the end.
Yeah, I'm just going to turn the recording off, Lourdes.
Oh, yeah.